How are we doing today, guys? It's Jesse, the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerdy through a common sense lens. And boys and girls, we all know that the Walt Disney Company had a very rough 2023 when it came to the box office. I mean, by many estimates out there, they've lost well over $1 billion, if not more, based on the production budgets that were reported, and then, of course, the actual box office returns that we saw. And now, as we all know, and we've learned over the years, that the production budgets that are reported on the media are generally much well below what the actual production budget meant, especially when it comes to the Walt Disney Company, between reshoots and rewrites and just not knowing what they're doing and having no idea what kind of direction they're going. These movies end up costing them way more than what the estimates are. I think we ended up finding out that the rise of Skywalker, the rise of Palpatine, as so many of the fans and the actual Star Wars fans like to call it out there, it's one of those movies that actually ended up costing over $600 million after everything was done with all the reshoots and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't find out about that until years later because of tax filings that happened in the United Kingdom that do eventually become public. And so that movie ended up actually losing them money, even though it made over $1 billion in the box office. And boys and girls, things aren't looking good very much for the Walt Disney Company going forward either. And as the king gets dethroned, another one rises from the ashes to take its place. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here today. Because ladies and gentlemen, the House of Mouse, the king of what used to be the Hollywood empire out there, is now officially been dethroned, and Universal is taking their lunch, and along with it, a whole lot of their market share. And honestly, considering how much better they're making the fans happy and how much more approving all of the fans are out there of their movies and of their adaptations, well, I think we can all be very happy to see that. So as you can see right over here from our dear sweet friends over at Giant Freaking Robot, Disney, embarrassed at the box office, loses to another major studio. Yes, they do. And it is a beautiful thing to see. So we're going to check out this article from Giant Freaking Robot, get into all of the juicy details and give you the exact numbers and see exactly how much Universal is beating them by. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe if you are not already, because we are growing, we are grinding, we are reaching higher and higher heights around here, and we could not do that without every single one of you. Hitting that subscribe button doesn't cost you a thing, but I will thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. So let's get into this and let's see exactly what all these juicy details are of exactly how bad this is for the Walt Disney Company. When it comes to the major Hollywood studios, Disney is the mega king that always seems to be beating the rest of the competition out of the water. Well, not anymore. The stats are in, and for the first time since 2015, Disney is not the top box office hound dog. That honor now goes to Universal Studios. And why shouldn't Universal Studios? I mean, you got the success of things like the Super Mario Brothers movies that made a lot of the fans very, very happy and ended up making them over $1 billion worldwide. And honestly, I think it was silly of them to take it out of the theater so soon when you had an entire summer of kids being out of school where they would have gone to this movie and rewatched it. But you know what? They decided not to do that. But either way, they still ended up absolutely crushing it at the box office. And that is thanks to Universal and Nintendo and sticking to their source material and making the fans happy. Guess what? The critics hated it. Guess what? The critics' opinions don't matter anymore. It's what the fans' opinions are what matters. It's those are the ones that put butts in seats at the box office. That's how that works. And that is something that Disney has clearly lost track on for a long time ago. So Universal Studios is kind of like the middle child of the production studios, always fighting for attention while the media continuously talks about Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery. As a guy that does this stuff all the time for a living, yeah, that is the truth. They do talk about them a lot. But this year, the company has clawed its way to center stage with an impressive collection of 24 films that accumulated a whopping $4.907 billion in worldwide ticket sales. In contrast, Disney only brought in $4.827 billion in box office sales, a staggering $80 million difference. And that's not even talking about the actual profitability of the Universal movies versus the Disney movies. Almost all of Universal's movies that they released were profitable in some form or another, whereas Disney literally only had one you could argue profitable movie last year, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the end of a saga that was written and directed by James Gunn. So obviously that is something that is very much different from the rest of the kind of garbage and trash that they were putting out for the rest of the year. But even then, with a budget of like $300 million, there's arguments to be made even at $850 million, like globally, that movie ended up making. There's still arguments to be made that movie actually still lost money, or at best barely broke even. Because like I said, we've seen how over these movies are over the years. So that's not even talking about that. So rough year for Disney. It was a rough year for Disney. Not only did they release fewer films than Universal Studios, but none of the Disney's blockbusters became colossal box office hits the way the studio is used to. Exactly. Nothing crossed $1 billion for them. Nothing crossed $1 billion for them. And that, as far as Disney Marvel is concerned, is an absolute failure. The 17 films that the company released included highly anticipated features like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which actually succeeded and made a lot of the fans happy. Heard nothing but good things about it. Still haven't watched it, but that's another story. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which was an absolute abysmal failure and cost them hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. It was Disney's biggest flop to date, up until that Dear Sweet The Marvels movie came out just this last fall, and we saw how bad that was. They literally stopped reporting on the numbers and pulled it from theaters less than a month after it was out there. That movie failed miserably. And Aquaman 2, a movie that is as the last movie in a universe that is officially over, still did better at the box office than The Marvels. Color us shocked there. The Little Mermaid, which obviously ended up being a huge flop as well. We reported on a lot of that kind of stuff for quite a while. But most of the films that came from the House of Mouse this year turned into gigantic failures. In fact, Disney managed to make history with the number of box office flops they had this year, knocking 5 movies off the list of worst movies ever. All in 1 year, boys and girls. 1 year they did that. Okay? That shows you how far the House of Mouse has fallen, how broken they are, how talentless they have found themselves now, because they fired all the people that didn't agree with the agenda and just hired people based on immutable characteristics like what's between their legs or what color their skin is or whether or not they agree with the same politics as the rest of Bob Iger and the rest of the management over there at the Walt Disney Company. So color us shocked that they are failing miserably at the box office because they've gotten away from their fans, they've gotten away from good storytelling, and now they decide to push the agenda over everything else, and they've allowed people like Kathleen Kennedy and Kevin Feige to completely and totally decimate and destroy their brands while all at the same time kissing their ass and praising them while literally the entire studio is burning down to the ground around them. The Walt Disney Company in its current form right now, under its current leadership with Bob Iger and the rest of the executives over there, is a miserable failure. And unless something changes with that proxy fight and that board leadership, nothing is going to change for the Walt Disney Company. It's going to continue to be one more abysmal failure after another. And you know what? Honestly, I'm good with it either way. Meanwhile, Universal left Disney in its dust with the box office smashes like the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Oppenheimer, and Megan, the first of which is currently ranking as the 16th most successful movie ever. Yeah, shout out Nintendo, shout out Universal. Can't wait for the Nintendo Land at Universal Studios in Florida to open up. It looks like it's going to be amazing, and it's absolutely something I will be saving up money for my family to be able to take them to that when it opens up. I'm super excited about that. Still, even with the duds, Disney managed to rank number 2 for 2023 and also holds the most titles in the top 10 best movies of the year. They had 4 of the highest grossing worldwide releases and 3 of the largest domestic releases. Yes, they did, but when you factor that up against how much money those movies cost, they still all failed miserably. They were all box office flops. Total accumulation, when you have that many movies and you spent that much money, doesn't pan out to any kind of actual success. It just looks good on a chart. However, even if Disney did have some of the biggest box office releases, the studio didn't make it into the top 3. The coveted top 3 spots were claimed by Warner Brothers for Barbie, Universal's dynamic duo, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and Oppenheimer. $1.4 billion, $1.3 billion, and $950 million for Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer is a movie that costs like $150 million to make, right? Compared to the absolutely insanely overbloated budgets of like $350 million like we heard for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Dysentery. We heard that one was could have been anywhere near over $400 million, possibly even $500 million for what that movie actually cost them to make. These have been abysmal failures. This marks the first instance since 2014, excluding the pandemic hit eras of 2020 and 2021, that not one of Disney's films crossed the 1 billion benchmark, which as far as Disney is concerned, that is success. While Disney remains a formidable force in the industry and coming in at number 2 is still no small feat, there's little doubt that the audiences are beginning to wonder at the decline in the quality of the Disney movies. Yep. 23 saw many of Disney's tentpoles falling short of box office expectations, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 emerging as the sole unequal triumph, grossing $845 million. Disney's reliance on expensive productions, typically ranging from $200 million to $250 million in budget, meant that even movies ranking in the top box office top 10 struggled to break even. Exactly. It is still all failed this year. This was exemplified by Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which despite being the 10th highest grossed movie at $476 million, failed to turn a profit during its theatrical run. And exactly, this is the problem. The quality of these movies suck. They put agenda-driven nonsense over actually good quality storytelling, actually giving the fans what they want, and now they're failing for it. Now they've officially lost their top spot, the first time since 2015, the first time since 2014 that they haven't had one movie in the top 3 grossing, and that shows you how far the mouse has come. Go woke, go broke exists for a reason, and that's exactly what the Walt Disney Company has come. And it's a really sad thing to see the once great House of Mouse fall into the exact same kind of cult mentality that we see permeate all of the rest of Hollywood and a lot of our major institutions out there. Well, guess what? You're finding out that woke doesn't pay. All of those audience members that you thought were going to just go right along with all of your nonsense and BS and all of these new audience members you were going to pull in, guess what? Neither of those has materialized. The audience that you did had has left you and no longer trusts anything Disney puts out there. And the audience you thought you were going to get, that like 1 or 2 or 3% of the population of those people that actually exist out there, yeah, guess what? They don't buy your toys. They don't show up to your movies. They're more likely to pirate your stuff online and watch it versus actually going and paying for your streaming service. That's Disney decided to bet on woke, specifically Bob Iger, and guess what? Now you're going broke. It's exactly what you deserve. Burn, Disney, burn. But hey, boys and girls, that's just my common sense take. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section down below. Does it surprise you at all that the Walt Disney Company has finally lost its crown, that it is no longer the top dog out there in the Hollywood world out there? Are you excited to see what Universal does in the future and how much more success they can get by actually telling good quality stories and appealing to their fans? Let me know what you think about all that down below. If you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe if you are not already. This is Jesse, the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerdy through a common sense lens. Thanks for watching.